Hey guys, what's going on? MJ Madness here, and today I'm going to be counting down the top 5 power forwards in the NBA. So for this list, I looked at every single starting power forward, and I made up a decision on my list of who I think the best 5 power forwards are in the NBA right now. Now, if you haven't seen my other videos, I'm doing a series where I'm ranking the top 5 at every single position in the NBA. So I've already made a video for point guards, shooting guards, and centers. So be sure to check those videos out on my channel as well. And if you guys enjoy this one, then I'll be sure to complete the series and upload that small forward video in a couple of days' time. But without further ado, let's get into the list. So coming in at number 5, we have Paul Millsap of the Atlanta Hawks. Now, there are a lot of really solid power forwards, and I think Paul Millsap is the best of this bunch, where they're always, really good, but not quite at that superstar level yet. Because I think when you look at power forwards, it's one of the weaker positions in the NBA. There aren't too many superstars that play power forward. If you were looking at number 5 on the top 5 point guards list, you'd probably have, Lillard or John Wall, and if you did it on, small forwards, you'd have, maybe Paul George. So there's definitely a bit of a drop-off when looking at the top 5 power forwards, just because maybe the position doesn't have as many superstars, but there definitely are still some very quality players that take up the top of the list. That's just why Paul Millsap maybe wouldn't appear on some of these other positions. But even so, he's still definitely a very good player in his own right, and I think he should lead the Atlanta Hawks to some success this year. I know they had a really good season a couple of years ago, and even last year, as that number 3 seed in the East. I think losing Al Horford's going to hurt that team a little bit, but I still think Paul Millsap has what it takes to lead the Hawks to the playoffs. I'd predict maybe 4th or 5th seed, I'm not really sure, and maybe they'll even make some noise when they get there. And in at number 4, we have LaMarcus Aldridge of the San Antonio Spurs. Now, LaMarcus Aldridge, he's really good at what he does. He's definitely one of the game's elite power forwards, but I think he doesn't really get enough recognition for what he does. Last year in San Antonio, he was kind of almost overshadowed by Kawhi Leonard and even Tim Duncan, but I think with Tim Duncan retiring, I think this is his breakout year where he really shows all of that talent that he has back when he was in Portland. You might remember last year he was probably the biggest thing that was open in free agency. He made that pretty big money move to go to the San Antonio Spurs, and all I really think is that imagine if he stayed in Portland, because I think the Trailblazers are already going to be a really solid team this year with CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard, but if he stayed there, I think they might have even been a contender to go pretty far in the playoffs. But now he's on the Spurs, and he's definitely going to help them out. I think they're probably the closest to a challenger in the Western Conference against those Golden State Warriors. But if they do want to challenge the Warriors, LaMarcus Aldridge, he's definitely going to need to play great. But I definitely think he has it in him. He's shown that talent before. He's definitely extremely skilled. And I'm predicting a pretty big season for him coming up. And coming in at number 3 on my list, I have Blake Griffin of the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, the former number 1 overall pick has really come into his own in the NBA, and I think he's the first person on this list that can truly be considered a superstar. Not many people would argue that he's not one of the best players in the NBA, and he definitely has the stats to back it up. Now, the only thing that really disappoints me about his career so far is how underwhelming the Los Angeles Clippers have been when it comes to contending for a championship in the postseason. They have such a solid team of Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, Chris Paul. They really should be doing better. I know it's been partly because of injuries, but they've always kind of continued to disappoint in the postseason, and they haven't really been able to take that next step and become true title contenders just yet. But I definitely think there is still room to grow, and even though Chris Paul and even DeAndre Jordan are kind of getting up there a bit in age, the Clippers still have that window open, and I think this year they should be as good as ever. Definitely a playoff team, and they could potentially go far in the playoffs if they do pretty solid and get some nice, good skill from their players as well. In the end, Blake Griffin is just a really, really good player. Definitely deserves his number 1 overall pick status. Not a bust by any means, and I think he's going to continue to be one of the best power forwards in the game in this upcoming season. And in at number 2, we have Draymond Green of the Golden State Warriors. Now, the Warriors have an absolutely ridiculously stacked team, but I would argue that Draymond Green, he's really the glue guy that kind of holds that team together. He's really solid, and I think Golden State really needs him to hold down that power forward position, and he's definitely really solid and talented on that team. It's absolutely ridiculous what they've built in Golden State. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant now. And I think Draymond Green, though, is probably one of the most important pieces of that Big Four because of how good and how complete he keeps the Golden State Warriors. Actually, a little bit off topic, but tonight I actually watched the first preseason game of the Warriors, and man, they looked really good. Kevin Durant in his debut, but I really noticed Draymond Green a lot. And I think maybe he's not as flashy as Klay Thompson or Steph Curry, hitting the threes all the time, but he's dependable, he's reliable, and even though he may be a little underrated and not appreciated enough by some of those Warriors fans, I think he's really important. Definitely the number 2 power forward in the NBA right now, and I think with all of those stars playing healthy on the Warriors, there's no reason they shouldn't be championship favorites in this upcoming season. The number 1 best power forward in the NBA right now before the 2016-17 season is Anthony Davis of the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, when this guy was drafted first overall a few years back, people thought he was going to be the next superstar. And so far, it looks like they're going to be right. I can't say enough about the skill set that this guy has. He's very talented, and it's just disappointing that the team around him hasn't really been able to perform. And that's one of the most regrettable things I see, because I'm a fan of the Pelicans. They're not my favorite team by any means, but I definitely like watching them play. Anthony Davis is definitely a really fun player, but the team they've built around him is pretty horrendous. I mean, they've been derailed by injuries, but I think that they're really being mismanaged, and they haven't been able to use his potential just quite yet. I like that pickup of Buddy Hield in the draft, though, and I really think that this season, if Anthony Davis can stay healthy, he could potentially lead the Pelicans all the way to the playoff spot, because he definitely has the talent to do so. Last year, I think a lot of people were really disappointed by his season because of his injuries, but that's really something you can't control, and despite him maybe not having the best stats, you can't really argue with that talent. And the scariest thing about Anthony Davis is that he's still only 23 years old. He is extremely young and already the best power forward in the NBA. Just imagine how much more room to grow he has. He has one of the highest potentials in the NBA, and I definitely think as long as injuries don't kill his career, he's going to soar and lead the Pelicans in the future to becoming one of the championship contenders in the NBA if the management of the Pelicans can do it right. Because they really have a generational player in Anthony Davis. And I'm not lying when I say he is definitely one of the best players in the NBA right now. If you guys enjoyed this video and want to see the final episode of the series, Top 5 Small Forwards in the NBA, then be sure to leave a like on the video. Also, let me know your list of the top 5 power forwards in the NBA. Do you agree with what I put on here? Maybe I forgot someone like Derek Favors? I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below, because I always love reading what you guys have to say. You definitely know your stuff about the NBA. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you guys all for watching, and see you next time.